No successful entrepreneur has built what they built by themselves.
Net profit, net profit, net profit. I mean, I cannot say that enough.
Practice of law is unpredictable enough. You ought to have a solid foundation so that you can deal with the unpredictable practice.
The owners don't truly believe that they are replaceable.
Law firm success strategies will begin after a brief word from today's sponsor, Answering Legal. Visit answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist team.
I would absolutely, without question, recommend Answering Legal to every law firm. Not one law firm, but every law firm out there. I've gotten so much business as a result of hiring them. I knew that we were getting a lot of calls after hours. So I needed a company to answer those phone calls live and to get the name, number, because that's key information. All my cases are called back. Answering Legal is the best.
Hey there, welcome to Law Firm Success Strategies. This is the show for law firm owners, managing partners, and practice group leaders who've invested years in honing your legal expertise, only to discover that running the business requires a different hat, one that might feel unfamiliar and at times even uncomfortable. I'm Doug Brown, your host, law firm leadership coach, and when I'm not doing this podcast, I'm an advisor who helps leaders implement growth and succession strategies to build a firm that lasts so they can enjoy the life they deserve. And today, I'm very excited to have Victoria Collier with us. She's an expert in firm valuation and brokerage, and the founder of Quid Pro Quo, LLC. Victoria is what I like to call a serial entrepreneur. She not only talks the talk, she walks the walk. She's been a law firm founder who sold her firm after 18 years, the co-owner of an 8-figure business helping veterans as an Air Force veteran herself. And she's also a consultant and advisor. And if that's not enough, she's owned an insurance firm, a publishing company, and a real estate business. I love your background, Victoria. The most important thing for us is she's an expert at one of the most important things that's going on right now, and it's on valuation, purchase, merger, and sale of law firms and other businesses too. She's a certified exit planning advisor and value builder. So that's what we're talking about today, how you can build your firm with the right assets that will make you both valuable and saleable in 1 to 10 years. Victoria, thank you so much for joining me and welcome.
Thank you. I can't wait to get into this discussion.
Yeah, me too. So let's go right in. What do you see as the biggest challenge that that law firm leaders and owners have when they're starting to prepare for succession?
We really are starting with the big ones. So the biggest challenge, I think, Doug, is that the owners don't truly believe that they are replaceable, and they haven't done what's necessary, and they can't even truly imagine doing what's necessary to replace them so that a buyer can feel comfortable buying their firm. And so they stay in their own way, if you will.
You know, I see that too. They've had their firm as their identity. It's everything that they have built up around them. And I almost wonder if they become kind of adrenaline addicted to being in the center of the firm and not even being able to, like you said, imagine what life would be like if they weren't in their firm, never mind nobody else can do it, as well as them. Yeah. And that's a problem because everybody's going to exit their firm at some point. It's just whether you're doing it on your own terms, right?
Exactly. And voluntarily or involuntarily. Exactly right. And so, the better method, if you will, is plan for that event. And even if you have to pretend that it's because you have, some unknown illness versus the desire to get out, plan as if we don't have the option, right? And it's going to happen. What would that look like? And, so we can take that egocentric, I think people do get some adrenaline, whether they realize that it's adrenaline or not, out of being needed And that's the one formula that we have to put in play to be able to increase the value of our firm and also be able to transition and sell it if we want to sell it. And that is to not be needed.
Wow. That's a easy to say. That's really a startling thing to try to believe that somehow you can still have value and not be needed. How do you help lawyers start walking down that path if they know that they should, but they're still reluctant to?
We have to really start, as I said a little earlier ago, really start thinking about if there was a crisis, what would be the most damaging to the firm because I'm not here, right? And so when we look at, will our firm survive? Will the firm survive if I don't survive? And if the answer is no, or it would really suffer a lot, maybe limp along, but it would suffer a lot, then we'd have to obviously ask the next question. Why? Why would it suffer a lot? Why would it die if you die? And so only when we're willing to ask those questions can we then say, okay, if these are the reasons why it would suffer a lot, then these are the areas we would want to work on first to try to mitigate that pain for our clients, pain for our employees if we have any, and pain for whoever is settling our affairs after that event that happened that made us unavailable to the firm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because we're getting lawyers into crisis and problem solving mode, and that's where they're comfortable living. So I really like that approach. Just kind of to shift topics a bit, how did you get into doing this succession planning? You've done so many things, and you're doing exactly the work you want to be doing now. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you got there.
It's interesting. I've always done the exact work I want to be doing. And if you look at them all, they all tie into each other in one way or the other. And that's because they tie into my principal being and my core values and what drives me. And that is helping people live better lives, right? Through professional and personal choices. And so I started mine even before my law firm. I worked at a nursing home doing hands-on care for people who couldn't do it for themselves. And so my way of being able to help them was being able to have a better, life in the nursing home. And so then when I became a lawyer, I started my own law firm right out of law school in the elder law arena, helping those people in the nursing homes, right? Be able to plan better so that they didn't have to rely on the nurses' aides like me for their life to be better, but they had the resources to be able to pay privately for people like me, and have better lives that way as well. So I started my own law firm right out of law school in estate planning and elder law. And many people who I served had their own businesses. And so we had to, through their estate planning, also plan the exit strategy, the succession plan for their businesses. So I was already familiar with it, just not at the level that I am now. And I'm not sure I ever felt competent at it when I was an estate planning lawyer, because I didn't have the training that I have now. And so when I went to sell my law firm, what I had done before that was I actually went through the process of trying to buy a law firm. And when you're on the other side, you find and look for different things, right? Your eyes are open in a whole new way. You're wearing a different color of glasses, right? So then when I went to sell my law firm, I could do it from the position of what does a buyer look at, right? So then I sold my law firm in 2020 after owning and operating it for 18 years. And then I went through a 40-hour exit planning program, very intense. And then I went through a 2-year valuation course to be able to value businesses. And then I went through another course to specifically be a broker to help, negotiate and broker the deals. So extensive training and personal experience.
So I love your background because everything leads in the same direction. It's very similar to my story, trying to help lawyers live a better life so that their practice supports their life and not their life is just devoted to their practice. One of the questions I get from many lawyers is they don't really believe their firm might be sellable, either because it can't survive without them or, nobody buys law firms. I've even talked to some recruiters who will basically say nobody buys law firms. I'm not sure that's true. So what do you see as the strategies that somebody should implement to make what their firm more sellable?
Well, first I have to kind of laugh because people do buy law firms. It's happening all day, every day. But there are certain things that make them more valuable as well as more sellable. And those are two different things.
Yeah.
Some of the attributes overlap, but I would say, there's really 5 things that we could look at that would make them definitely more sellable and inherently more valuable. And number 1 is what we were talking about before. And what we need to do and what the owner needs to do is create a culture where the owner is not necessary. They're not necessary to do the sales, which means the consultations. And I have to spell that out, Doug, because some people say, oh, I don't do sales. And then I say, well, who does the consultations? Well, that's me. And I'm like, well, that is a sale, right?
Yeah. I don't sell. I do business development.
That's right. That's right. Because selling is a bad word. But anyway, so, make it so they are not the one that is doing the consultations. And they're not the ones doing the production. They're not the ones that are, making the sausage after the sausage has been sold to somebody in a consultation. And I'm not saying necessarily that you need to go out and have an associate that does all of that stuff for you too. But you've got to have someone who's doing that. So the firm is not so dependent on you, right? So that's number 1. Create a culture where the firm does not depend on you for its success, for its revenue, for its production, and its success. The second, I would say, is, and you don't hear this enough in this way, and that is track all the data. Marketing leads, consults, conversions. What's your conversion rate, right? Are you selling 78% of the people who you meet with, or are you selling 20% of the people you meet with? And it's interesting. I asked a lawyer this the other day, and I said, he's one of my coaching clients, and he's a brand new coaching client. So we're just now starting to look at data. And I said, what's your conversion rate for last month? And he goes, oh, well, I think I sold just about everybody, probably 75%. And I said, well, that's great. Show me the numbers. Tell me how many people did you meet and which of those closed? And it literally was 25%. He was off by 50%. And it's because, we remember with recency and latency, but nothing that happened in the middle. And he's just remembering, oh yeah, I had a lot of people that hired me in the very end, right? That made it feel like it was a good month, and it actually wasn't. And so it's not what we think, it's what actually we chart and that we measure. And not just the leads, the consults, and the conversions, but also what is our average case value? If we have multiple lawyers that work in the firm, what is each lawyer bringing in from a revenue standpoint? And I don't mean necessarily sales, but what are they working on? That kind of stuff. Because I can tell you this, Doug, I'm in conversations with 3 different law firms to buy a law firm that we have for sale right now. Every single one of those law firms is asking, I want the revenue broken down by the attorney in the firm, because their concern is the owner is the one who's generating all the revenue, and the other associates are just, getting by, I guess.
Sure.
And that when the owner leaves, then so does the revenue, right? So we have to chart that too. It's not just a global, hey, we made $1 million this year. Who's making what? Where's the impact? Okay. So that would be the second thing, is the data. The third would be net profit, net profit, net profit. I mean, I cannot say that enough.
You mean it's not about the revenue?
It's not about the gross revenue. That makes us feel good, the gross revenue. And, let's just say again, everybody wants to make that $1 million mark. When I made my first million, I was negative $113,000. And I was like, but I knew going in that year beforehand, I'm like, we're going to hit $1 million. I don't care what it takes. And we did it. We were negative. And I said right afterwards, we're not doing that again like that. We're going to do that again, but not like that.
Not like that.
But it did give me the confidence to make the $1 million, but I knew that we need to do it differently because it really is the net that makes all the difference, both with how stressed you are at work or lack thereof, what you take home and how stressed your family is or not, and also the value of the business. The value of the business is instrumentally more valuable when you have profit. And the higher profit you have, the better, because multiples of offers come from often the net. Now, that's not the only thing they come from, but it's a big factor. So we got to get that net up there. The fourth thing would be systems. You can certainly sell a law firm that has no systems, but generally that's going to make your pool of buyers smaller. And the pool of buyers in that case would be potentially associates that you have working for you, if you have any, or another firm or lawyer that wants to come in and be you, right? And they already have their own systems in place, right? But it's not going to be a buyer that is an investor that wants to buy your firm because it has great net profit. It has a great team that's doing everything, but there's no systems in place. And so if the team leaves, they don't have a way to train new people, right? They don't have, they're just recreating, and nobody wants that. Not investors anyway. So systems are very important. And then lastly, the fifth thing, Doug, I would say is predictability. Predictability in revenue, predictability in clients, recurring, like referrals, predictability in processes and systems, how we do things, predictability in your team. How long have they been there? If everybody is less than a year, that's not very predictable for them to stay, right? So we want predictability in many different areas within the business, not just the income. So those would be the top five.
There's a lot there, and especially on, the systems. When you talk about the systems that are like the most important systems to have, what kind of things do you look for?
So the first and foremost I would talk about are your financial systems. How do you record your income and your invoices and bills and expenses? And it is shocking to me. I spoke with a law firm the other day that has $2 million, and they're not even on a program like QuickBooks. They are just using Excel and something else, I'm not sure. But one of the businesses I sold, they were making about $750,000. They had no profit loss statements. We literally had to hand over check registers to potential buyers. And that just from a buyer's perspective says, if you don't have your finances in somewhat of a business-like manner, how's the rest of your firm going to be, right? That's the starting point. That's the first thing people look at is your finances first and foremost. And then if they, don't look professional, then they're going to think the rest of your firm's not professional. And that may not keep them from buying it, but it's sure going to keep them from giving you a big offer, right? They're going to really downplay that offer. So I'd say financial systems. Beyond that, I would say the system like a CRM that is going to your production. Like once your client hires you, how do you manage the flow of cases? And the reason I say that is so important for law firms. Now, that may be different in other businesses, but for law firms specific, because there's such a high risk of legal malpractice, is from a buyer's perspective, I want to see what is your client flow, your stages, and your communication with them. Where are you attaching those emails? Where are you attaching the documents, correspondence between you? Where are the notes that you are taking when you talk to somebody? So that way, if I have to get rid of someone or if someone leaves, it's a fluid transaction. And we're not just all wondering, hey, what's going on with this client? So the CRM is very important, I would say, number 2. And then from a valuation standpoint, from a desirability standpoint, I would say any kind of systems that, from a production standpoint, helps your employees do their job more efficiently so that they are not wasting time and resources, and so that everything is done in a consistent manner. So all the clients are getting the same experience, kind of like McDonald's. The experience is either good or bad, but it's always the same, right?
Right.
And, I can't emphasize that piece enough, because that's where law firms really kind of have the leaky boat, right? And they don't even know it. They have so much money that's just pouring out, and they don't know it because they just see that everybody's busy. They see that the work is getting done. They see that the customers are happy. But what they don't see is, for example, their labor percentage to gross revenue is 40, 50, 60, 70%. I saw in one firm recently, 70%. I'm like, how are you taking any money home at all with 70% labor? That's outrageous. Labor should be about a third. And in some practice areas like litigation, it will be higher. But in some practice areas like estate planning, business law, immigration without litigation, it can be as low as 25%, right? As long as we're efficient and we have the systems that support us. So that's what I'm kind of talking about there as far as systems.
Yeah, and I see how all of these things are related, because the systems is a way of thinking in addition to a computer system. And the system is where you track the data that you need to prove that how you're operating, which results in the profit, you control the profitability. And having that culture of systems, predictability, accountability, those are all things that employees want too. One of the systems that, even just how are you setting expectations for your employees? How are you measuring them? How are you developing them? How are you making sure that your top performers aren't going to scoot the minute that the owner decides to announce his or her transition? So it is all about systems and that predictability, because the law firm, the practice of law is unpredictable enough. You ought to have a solid foundation so that you can deal with the unpredictable practice.
Right. Well, and part of that, Doug, is, one of the things that I hear from lawyers all the time, and it just, from a business standpoint, hurts my heart. And that is lawyers that don't track time and don't make their employees track time because they're flat fee billing, and they feel that they are being kind of contrarian to all the hourly billing, and I don't want to do hourly billing and all that kind of stuff. I get it. I don't want to do hourly billing either. And I don't. I have flat fee everything. I always have been with my law firm. But nonetheless, there's a huge benefit to tracking time on matters to see if we are profitable per matter, if we are focusing our efforts on the right matters, and if the right people in the firm are doing the right things on the files and spending the right amount of time on them. But law firm owners will say, my staff won't do that. I'm sorry, whose firm was this?
And my staff won't do that really often means, right, I don't want to ask my firm to do it because I don't want to do it myself.
Correct. Exactly. And so when we have that culture, I will tell you that it's going to be difficult to sell anyone, your firm, when your employees are the ones who are making all the decisions about how the operations of the firm are going to go.
Well, and the other side benefit, if we look at this not as you have to bill your time, but if you're in a flat fee or contingency practice, having the data about how time is being spent can help you coach and counsel and mentor them so that they're using their time effectively, so they're getting more return out of their time as opposed to spinning their wheels on things without any. It's like playing a game of basketball without knowing how you keep score.
Exactly. And then it goes to that fifth point we talked about, which is the predictability. Because if we know those factors, then we know that we have a capacity for X number of files based on how many hours it takes each person to work on that. And then if we are pushing that capacity, then we know exactly when to hire somebody and what kind of work that we need to hire them for. And so all of it, as you said, it's all tied together. And, one component isn't enough to make a firm desirable to sell or buy. And one component is not enough to increase the value. We really have to have all the pieces to hit it out of the park, if you will. But certainly when we are evaluating a firm, we look and see which pieces need to be done first, right?
Yeah, and not for nothing, but having this stuff in place so that your firm doesn't depend on you. How great would it be to have that for the last 5 or 10 years of your practice so you could have more time away instead of, running it the same way you always have and until the very end. It's a little bit like renovating your house right before you sell it. Why don't you renovate and enjoy it yourself for a while?
That's right. Exactly right. And some people, when they do that, they actually start loving their firm again, and they decide, I don't need to sell it. I make enough money and I'm not putting in as much work because I have beautifully trained, mentored, and delegated the tasks. I've basically, instead of exiting my firm, I've just exited my roles. And now I'm having a lot more fun and I'm still making the money I want to make. And as you said earlier, it provides options. This is the part that, I wish that our system, the legal system, taught some of the basic principles I taught when I was teaching in business school, or that CLEs actually promoted this, because we this culture that has not served us of, we are a practice, we're not a business, is really led a lot of lawyers to put a lot of effort into building things only to not be able to realize the value of their life's work because they didn't adopt these basic business principles. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, just look at the history and tradition of law. It was a practice. It was solo practitioners. We even call ourselves practitioners, solo practitioners. And still the majority of law firms today are solo practitioners. Mm-hmm. And those are not businesses. And when people say, you can't sell a law firm, you're right. You can't sell a solo practice. But if you operate like a business and you put the key pieces in place, you in fact can sell a law business.
Love that. So you've been doing this work for a long time. Is there one story that stands out to you of where a firm came in a state of relative disrepair and you were able to help them with the outcome that they wanted? I'm sure you've got a bunch. Is there one that stands out?
I was going to say, I could talk to you all day on that. But yes, there is one specific that stands out. And the reason this one stands out is I knew this lawyer for years and years because we were both in the estate planning world together. And so we were in the same circles, that kind of stuff. So she came to me. And when she came to me, essentially, she was a lawyer that had an associate attorney and one other assistant. The other assistant had been with her for 15 years and was doing everything in the office. Like, she was the person who answered the phone. She did the intake screening. She scheduled the appointments. She did all the mail. She set up all the seminars. I mean, she was everything, except that the owner did the consultations and then also did like the drafting, the production. And then she had her associate that did another line of work within the business. And so they were doing great. The owner was only working about 3 days a week. So that was about 25 hours a week. She was out riding horses when she wasn't in the firm. She was doing everything she wanted to do. Life was beautiful. She had a net profit of 60%, and doing very well financially, over 500,000. Okay, let's just say over 500,000. When she came to me, this one key employee left. Like, she didn't have her anymore. And so she didn't know how to schedule the seminars. The owner didn't know how to schedule the seminars. She was finding things in drawers that were just malpractice all over the place, like deeds that hadn't been recorded. I can't even go through all of it. And the problem, and then her associate was, limping along. She had no key performance indicators, no goals, and she was getting a salary that wasn't based on performance at all. And very not comfortable talking with clients. So she was really just back end production. And so, so the owner had to step back in and start working 50 plus hours a week. This owner's spouse was doing the bookkeeping on the weekends, so no bookkeeper or anything. Although they did fortunately have, QuickBooks at least. So that was helpful. So we had to come in and say, look, how do we minimize you from being imprisoned in your firm? Because now you are in here doing everything, literally everything, from answering the phone to scheduling the appointments to, trying to figure out how to schedule your seminars, that kind of stuff. So we went through coaching for at least 2 years. So we did twice a month, every month, we'd get on the phone and we'd coach and we would triage what is the most important thing based on the pain point to her, the profitability, and certainly continuing to service the clients in the way that she needed them and wanted them to be serviced. So we coached for 2 years on all of these things that we're talking about. Number one was team. Got to get the right team in place. Once we have the right team in place, then we need to have procedures for them to follow so that you don't have to sit down with every single one every single time when you need to train something. Okay. And so then it was, which team members, had to do with the pain points. And then once we had a solid team, then we started working on how do we remove you now from each of your roles. Okay. So we did all that. And then fast forward 2 years after all of that, then she sold her firm for over $500,000, all cash up front, at closing. And then she chose to stay on as of counsel with the buyer. And it's been 2 years now. And she still works, doing just what she wants to do and nothing else, and gets paid very well for that. And she gets to come and go, and she works, less, like 10 hours a week maybe, and goes and rides her horses. So she's exactly where she was before, with the high profitability, playing with her horses, sold her firm for over $500,000, all cash up front. And the firm keeps rocking along because of the foundations we put in place during those 2 painful years.
What a great story. And I think that if you're watching this episode and you don't have any of the things that Victoria talked about, it gives you hope that you can have them, because that story is even out of crisis. When should somebody start thinking about implementing these 5 keys?
Well, the best answer is when they start their firm to begin with. The second answer is yesterday. And if not yesterday, then today, because there is no time that is too soon, right? Because when we start putting these things in place, as we talked about before, we just have a better business. We enjoy it more, regardless if we want to sell it or not. It's just a better business. Why would we not want to do that?
Yeah, I totally get it. I actually I spoke with a person in an estate planning practice in Texas a while back, and he decided I'm gonna try to do it myself. And so I said, all right, well, let me ask you a question. So if you had a good friend with lots of assets, and they said, I'm going to do my estate planning myself, what would you tell them? And he proceeded to tell me all the things that he would tell them. I said, okay, this is the thing that you've spent your whole life building. How many times have you sold a law practice?
Yeah.
Well, none. So what if, do you see how this situation is the same as your friend with all the assets? I'm going to try to do it myself anyway.
That's because he's a lawyer and he thinks he knows. So lawyers can do anything, right? That was the most frustrating part to me when I was an actual estate planning lawyer. Any other lawyer who didn't do estate planning also thought they could do estate planning as well.
Yeah, you know what I tend to get on my soapbox about is that no successful entrepreneur has, especially the ones you hear about on TV, the Jeff Bezos, Phil, you name the entrepreneur, has built what they built by themselves. A professional golfer is on the golf course, but he or she has a caddy and a nutrition coach and a strength coach and short game and a whole team of people.
Right.
Yet somehow we as lawyers think there's some special sticker we get for doing it ourselves. I have never once seen at the end of somebody's career or their life to say, well, that person did it all themselves. Instead, what we hear about is the impact that people have on others and how they've surrounded themselves with the right people. And so this journey that lawyers are on, like a business, needs to have a team of people to help them with things. So if you're not great at writing procedures, there's somebody that can help you write procedures. If you're not great at figuring out your operating system because you just wish we were still on fax machines, there are people that can help with that. But doing it by yourself means that you haven't built a business, you've built a practice that when you stop, so does your income. That's just tragic because it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't. And that's where people really don't understand the waves, the ripples that happen when they say, I'm going to do it myself. Fine. Let's just pretend you have the skills to do it yourself, right? Like for example, I was an estate planning attorney. I helped my clients do a transition plan with, their estate plans and their businesses. So I could have said, I'm going to do it myself, right? Except that if I were to do that, then that takes time, right? Let's say I have the skills. It takes time. It takes energy, and it's emotional because I'm very tied to my law firm. And so all of those things, if I'm spending my time, my energy, and my emotions on finding a buyer, interviewing buyers, then a buyer saying, no, I'm not interested anymore, then having to find another buyer and all that kind of stuff. What am I sacrificing for that? Well, I am sacrificing the time I'd be spending in my practice, still talking with clients or managing my team or any of the things that keep my business going so that it doesn't have a decline in revenue, which then buyers are going to see and question and say, well, the firm really does need you because when your focus wasn't there, the revenue went down. And so those are the negative consequences they don't think about.
Sure is. And the firm actually has more value, right? When you have a team of people around you and it's not just all about you.
Right.
I'm sure there was something else that I thought of, but it's past my mind. But go ahead.
I'll add this one thing.
Please.
When you do it yourself, it's kind of like, putting, like a client on the stand in a criminal case. They don't know when to say what or the best impact, right? And so oftentimes I'm coaching my clients when we are in sales conversations as to, what to say, when, and how. And it's all going to get said at some point, but there's a strategy as to when to have certain conversations, how to have these conversations for the best impact. And when I say impact, I don't mean the money that they're going to get. I mean the success that there's actually going to be a transaction, right? And when you're doing it yourself, you're excited. You want to get it going. You want to, just jump in there, and there's more strategy than that.
Well, and the thing to supplement that, I remembered I've had a coach for many years. And when I became director of the Bar Association or took on different roles, one of the most valuable things was I would tend to get really excited and kind of discount my own value. And my coach was able to say, hold on, no, this is what you're really worth. This is how you approach it. So I made more money because I had that person by my side. And when I was coaching somebody who had just taken over a business, he grew by 30% in his first year after doing the turnaround. And when I talked to him after, what did we do well? He says, there were times when you were really irritating because you were telling me to slow down and not go off with a half-baked idea. And at the time, it was really frustrating. And I'm so glad I listened to you because I was able to think things through and make better choices. And and so that's the same value of having that expert person who is objective. Because when I took over division, people said, well, you can interpret the contracts. I'm like, no, I can't, because I know what I want the outcome to be. I need somebody to tell me what it really says.
Right. Well, it's funny because when I used to do coaching, I actually had in my contract a paragraph that had a statement that said, there will be times when you will both love and hate me at the same time. That's how you went.
Well, we work with smart people, and we want somebody to tell us the truth, even when it's what we don't want to hear. And that's the key of any advisor on your team. If they continue to say yes all the time, then it's probably time for a new advisor. So what's one thing, Victoria, that somebody listening who's thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get started. There's so many things on my mind. What's one takeaway what's a good first step they could do to start on this journey? Because it's not just flipping a switch. It really is a journey.
It is a journey. And it's flipping the switch as far as your mindset has to switch. You have to switch and say, I'm ready to be a business owner. And when I'm ready to be a business owner, what's the first step on this journey? That is to really do a deep dive analysis as to where would my firm break if I were out for 3 months? Where are all the places it would break if I couldn't communicate with my law firm for 3 months? And then start a list and then start prioritizing the fixes on the list.
You frame that really well, because it's not I'm ready to leave my practice. It's I'm ready to run it like a business so that I have some more options down the road. Even if I don't know what I'm going to do, at least I have more options. It's a great tip to start. Wow, our time flies. We could talk about this for a very long time. I really want to thank you for your insights today. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about how you do the voodoo that you do, how would they do that?
Yeah. So our website is www.quidproquolaw.com. So it's quidproquolaw.com. And they'll be able to see on there our process for valuations and acting as broker to help them sell a law firm if they want to. And so that's the first place to start. And I would say the second place is, as you've said, we also do a podcast called Smart Lawyers Position and Transition. So I would say that's a great resource for getting in the conversation and just hearing about the different matters and issues that will come up. And when you want to be able to understand them before you're right in the heat of it, now would be the best time to start listening versus, when you wanted to sell it a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And it ties in with, we really should, as business owners, be spending at least, say 20% of our time over the course of a month thinking about preparing for the future, whether it's your strategy or troubleshooting or thinking about how do I grow the value of this? Because otherwise what happens is you don't have 20 years of experience, you have the same year of experience 20 times. And that might help you serve your clients, but that doesn't help you serve your business and your life. So thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate having you. We'll have links to your website and your podcast on our homepage here. And if you're listening and you have topics that you would love to hear about, go ahead and let me know. And if you're an expert and have something to share, I'd love to talk with you. So that's it for now. I'm Doug Brown, the law firm leadership coach. And until next time, bye for now.